So what are you wearing there?
So I'm this is like an eyeglass that well, it's a crude and crummy version of the eyeglass, sort of like the iTap. The one that I built
Yeah.
back in the 70s and 80s
Oh, okay.
is kind of cumbersome. And then around the 1990s, I built something that kind of looks like normal eyeglasses and everything. But the problem is now the world is so standards based.
Yes.
Are unstandards based. There's anti-standards like HDMI, standards that kind of conspire against us and make it difficult to interoperate. So I'm kind of stuck living in sort of an Amish world where I'm using older technologies because if you look around my lab, I've sort of surrounded myself with all the things I love, like my
That
like
there's
this.
Weird Al Yankovic has a song "Living in an Amish Paradise." I think.
Yes. I feel like somehow I'm like a cyborg that's stuck in kind of a disconnected, bad world where there's really crummy technologies that don't interoperate or don't interface. Like this eyeglass I built in the 1990s just looks like ordinary eyeglasses, but it doesn't interoperate. Like the standards now are so difficult to interoperate with, like HDMI, for example. It's such a heavy bloatware kind of standard. And
Too much overhead, you mean?
yeah, it's just hard to build a little microcontroller or small, simple things that work in real time. And also when you plug something in, when you plug a cable in to wiggle it around, like on my camera, I've got a little cable. When I wiggle it around, it flips out for a second. Then it takes a few seconds before it comes back. So if something's loose, and there's 6 different things that could be loose, you're trying to wiggle them one at a time to see which one it was. But by the time you get the feedback, it's delayed. And I always said feedback delayed is feedback denied.
Oh, interesting. Also, it sounds like it was a caching problem then.
Yeah, like in the old times when you wiggle a wire on an NTSC signal, within a fraction of a millisecond you can see the effect on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The time between when you take action and see the result. Like I still have my Apple II computer here from 1978. It still works, and I think it's the fastest computer in the world in terms of the latency between when you press a key and see the effect of pressing the key.
Is that an issue between, serial versus parallel?
Well, no, it's just that technology has become so rampant with bloatware. The standards have become so bloated. Like the time it takes, like I was looking at oscilloscopes, for example, and I plug a motor into an oscilloscope and an XY plot, on something like any of these, it'll show it right away, update the screen, millions of times per second. But on a modern scope, it's updating maybe 30 times a second, so you can't really see which way, like on an XY plot, for example, you can't see which way it's going for a motor, whereas you can clearly see it on a cathode ray screen. So so the technologies we have become bloated.
Interesting.
Like an HDMI TV, let's say I've got 4 outputs on my computer and another 4 inputs on the TV for the HDMI, and I want to try all 16 possible permutations. I got to plug it in and wait a few seconds before I get to see what happens, and then I plug it into the next one and wait a few seconds to see what happens. Whereas in the old days, I could just take an NTSC signal and brush it by, just touch it really quickly, and you'd immediately see the effect. So the standards have become bloated and proprietary in some sense as well, too, right?
Interesting.
And so there's all kinds of licensing, and it's a very complicated universe to play in the world now. So it's not friendly to innovators and creators.
That is interesting. So, yeah. So, what would you like to do today? You said you want to do recordings. So,
yeah, I just want to get I want to kind of go through. So, I've always felt that technology has sometimes is a disservice to us. And the IEEE, I love the slogan. I saw advancing technology for humanity. And when I first saw that, I said, that's what I want to devote my life to, advance technology for humanity.
Yes.
But then I got...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
Then I got thinking, I also think it might want to say advancing technology for people and planet or something, as our president of the university put it.
What do we do about artificial people then?
Well, AI is... Well, one way to look at all of this is to kind of we've come up with a taxonomy of the three axes, I guess we call it. There's the physical world of reality, alpha, made of atoms.
Mm-hmm.
The Greek word atom is a Greek word that starts with the letter alpha, the first letter of the Greek alphabet, actually. And so atoms. And then there's the technological universe of bits, virtual cyber. And then there's the social world of genes, gamma, the third letter of the Greek alphabet.
Now, why gene? Why would you say the social world is gene?
Well, it's a poetic narrative, I suppose, because atoms, bits, at MIT we often talked about atoms and bits. It's kind of a poetic narrative. It's not really exactly right because atom means undivisible in Greek, but of course there's subatomic particles like quarks and pi mesons. Mm-hmm. So when we say bits and atoms, and of course the other problem is that a computer can't exist without the physical universe, so there is no software without hardware. Mm-hmm. But if you kind of accept it as a poetic narrative, shall we say, atoms and bits, the physical and
that
virtual.
Part I get. It's the genetics, genes, and social that I don't quite know.
Well, I would say
like
that
inherent. I always think of that as inherent traits versus things that happen through interactions.
Yeah, I guess what's the smallest undivisible piece of matter? Well, we know it's not the atom because there's subatomic particles, but we talk about all of reality as atoms in a poetic sort of way. Mm-hmm. And likewise, we could talk about all of society as genes, perhaps, like the smallest unit of life or humanness or something like that. We could say beams, or in the sense of Martin Rotblat came up with this idea of beams, the smallest unit of being.
Is a beam. Okay.
That could work too. I kind of like atoms, bits, and genes because they're Greek word. The genes is a Greek word, and it starts with the letter gamma, which is the third letter of the Greek alphabet, and then you can label the three axes, alpha, beta, and gamma, the first three letters of the Greek alphabet.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just it's sort of what you want to call it. Like loosely speaking, when we say atoms, we're referring to all the physical world of subatomic particles all the way up to the edge of the universe. And we just pick atoms as some point along that's representative of the whole axis. And likewise, bits is the smallest unit of information, analog or digital. And genes is maybe the smallest unit of life, perhaps. I don't know. It's a poetic narrative for a much more. But I think to say there's three different elements. There's the physical, the virtual, and the social. I think that makes sense.
What you might talk about is the gathering is the G instead of genetic. It's the genetics and the social that I don't get. So I'm just saying maybe there's another G word you could choose there.
Yeah.
Group is a simple one. People would understand that. Social.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I sort of want it to stand for the individual person as well as the society. Like I think of human, like we think of human-computer interaction, HCI, as an interplay between the human and the technology. And
are you recording now, by the way, or do you want to?
Yes.
Oh, you are. Okay. So this is our discussion right now. Go ahead.
Yes. So the idea is that we have an interaction, say, between a human and a computer, but that interaction takes place within the environment, the world around us. So I don't know if did you have a chance to look at the thing that the website I just put together, a quick website with the.
Yeah. No, I've got it in front of me right now. Looking at this. Yeah.
Yeah. So in there's kind of this this idea that we interact with. Well, the first thing, if you look even before technologies, how do we interact with our environment? So we've got three axes: the environment, which is sort of represented as the blue droplet shape, the blue drop. There's the technology, represented as the green rectangle, and kind of inspired by
oscilloscope tracing it, yeah.
This kind of thing. And then there's the human represented as the circle, because, when you go to a LinkedIn profile or something or any social media, you often see human faces in circles. It's just kind of a thing. So, and then the colors are, the blue is the blue earth, the blue yonder, the ocean, the lake, the sky. It's the blue yonder off in the distance. Planet Earth is blue, and then green is the color of technology because, a lot of these oscilloscopes are green, and green is the color of money. Green is the color of circuit boards, so it makes sense to kind of think of and you think of the green screen, the old computer text terminals.
And we've got blood, so therefore social is red.
And we've got blood because no matter what race or origin you are, if you put your hand over a light bulb in a dark room, it looks red.
That's right. Yep. At least right now,
Yeah, red light passes through our skin. We're all red really because of the hemoglobin in our blood. So
exactly.
It makes sense to use the colors red, green, and blue for
primary colors in many color systems. So.
Yeah, and then the interconnections between them are represented in the secondary colors. So the connection between the human and the environment is magenta, because that's one of the secondary colors that's combined of the red and the blue.
Yep.
And so, for example, if we say we humans connect with our environment in a very simple way, technology should facilitate. At least it should not stand in the way of our connection to our environment. So, for example, we humans, we have as input, we require food, clean water, fresh air, and as inputs, and in terms of outputs, we require sanitation facilities, access to sanitation facilities, and these are tough problems technologically throughout the world. There are a lot of people living without adequate food or water or sanitation.
Yeah, I mean, you call it sanitization, but what it really is, it's the reuse of resources, reuse of atoms, essentially, is what happens. It's
recycling.
We use sanitization as a means of doing that in a safe way, so we don't get infected from stuff that could have nasty bugs in it, or it's unsightly or something like that. But really, what it is, it's a continuous, it's a closed cycle use of resources. We in our living only borrow resources and energy, and then we turn that into thoughts, actions, and emotions.
Yeah, that's true. In some sense, we're living on borrowed energy, like we're part of we humans are part of our surrounding world, and it's sort of this closed loop feedback system,
that. If you think of like some of the indigenous peoples in North America, what I recall reading about it, a lot of times they had, part of the reason why there was such difficulty in coming to legal agreements is that they had a whole different perception of ownership, is that we only borrow resources. We don't really own the land. We are upon the land, things like this. So anyway, just another observation there.
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't in some sense. Yeah, that's a very good point. How can we own the waters, the earth, water, and air, the elements, Well,
I mean, we've created legal entities that are based upon these, but in a sense, it's more of a temporary stewardship, which carries, maybe responsibilities as well as, opportunities, but also responsibilities as well. I mean, that might be one way to think about it.
Yeah. A lot of people said you don't buy your food and drink, you rent it.
Certainly that's true with beer.
Yeah, people say you don't buy beer, you rent it. It goes through you pretty quickly.
Exactly.
So it's like this closed loop feedback. You can think of the nature, the blue drop, the environment, and the human, the red circle, as this feedback loop with arrows going to and from one to the other, making these two connections between these two things.
Well, and that means also that we are in fact part of our environment. But
yes.
As far as we know, we're actually a unique part of our environment, that we're actually aware that we're there. And I think that's not a binary distinction, that you either are aware or not aware, but there's various levels of awareness, because I think dogs and cats and animals have some level of awareness. I mean, they certainly are aware of what's going on. They may not have long-term memory or continuity, the way we do, or impressions or things of that kind. But we don't totally know that because we don't know people.
Well, dogs
We
do
don't know
have
how brains
long-term
work.
memory. They'll often remember people.
Oh yeah,
If
yeah.
I've got a visitor coming over, our dog would recognize somebody who was never been for many years. So dogs will have, and birds remember their way home.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. No, they have memory. But there's this thing we call consciousness that I don't know if we totally know how to define it or what it. We certainly don't know how it happens. We think we've got it. We think other things don't have it. So there's this thing. There's a transaction going on between resources and our consumption of resources. We as other animals turn that into thoughts, turn that into action, but also somehow, you know, we seem to be a creature that turns that into um, things that can be passed on, that you can build upon, that sort of accumulate ability, which can amplify the next generation. People now, we find out new things, we find out how they work. We can use that to make new things, to find out, uh, construct stuff, to make tools, to make write about, to pass. We've invented technologies for passing on information, impressions, thoughts, and emotions to people, other people, both now and in the future. So we've got these, um, in some extent, to transcend time itself. Though it's not a perfect analogy because things decay anyway. Even if we try to pass things on, they decay. There's something built into the universe. Maybe it's related to entropy that you know uh, order won't last forever, or whatever it is you intend to make will not be that way forever. But somehow you can pass on some capability that people, even though things pass away, some stuff remains that helps us to be better and better, or not.
Yeah,
So.
that's interesting. As humans, we're makers in some sense. We make things,
Mhm.
and other species too are makers. Also, like birds are makers. They build their homes from found objects. They
Mhm.
build their nests.
There's even some things they look like they're using tools. They're using stuff as tools.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Some other beings do use tools and things like that. So it's very interesting how we build something as a lasting. For a bird, it will be for a certain time period of lasting. We build things. Maybe some humans will build things that last longer, and uh, the memory of those things. So we're affecting our environment. By environment, what we often mean is that which surrounds us. It's interesting to think of the environment as us ourselves, and the environment as that which is around us. Like you are part of my environment.
Mhm.
This room that I'm in is part of my environment. The computer here is part of my environment to some degree, or at least it's a mediary, and you're part of my environment and I'm part of your environment. And if we think of the idea of the environment as us ourselves, the environment as our surroundings, and the environment as the boundary or border between us and our surroundings. Like for me, one example of environment is my clothes, because
Mhm.
the clothing forms a boundary or border between the environment and my environment.
And,
And
and these are all part of, because of who we are, what we do. These are also part of an ongoing narrative. We're essentially we're storytellers, but we create the stories, and it's part. A lot of this is sort of an interpretation of the world and ourselves to ourselves. And creating, that's part of the social thing, but it's also part of the creativity that individuals can come up with. And this gets into these interesting aspects. Is this actually free will? Is this spontaneous, or how much of it's spontaneous, or how much of this is predetermined by something else? Or there's even, if you're going to get far out speculation, are we actually, avatars in a game that somebody's playing? You know, if it is, I hope we at least, can play a good game.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, there's all manner of different things that could happen, that we're involved in. But I think thinking about this stuff and conceptualizing this, I believe that having thoughts like this, and even getting in philosophy as well as the science, helps us perhaps to find new ways of looking at the world, and as a consequence, be able to find and understand things in new ways. And if we pace at which technology goes today, I think things are changing so much that more than ever in the history of the world, we need to embrace what it means to be human. And by that I mean the stories we tell, the impressions we have, the understanding we have of the world, which is changing around us. That we need to develop new ways and perhaps even using our tools to create new flexibilities, new means of expanding what it means to be human. And part of that is this whole, understanding an artificial world, which really, in a sense, it isn't artificial. It's us. It's just new ways of expressing ourselves, new ways of interacting with, as you say, the bits, the atoms of the world, but our consciousness, interfacing with this world, So anyhow, I'm thinking going down a blind alley here, but I just think there's
I mean the whole idea of this virtual world or cyber world or say metaverse. I mean, one way to think of it is to think of the physical world alpha, the virtual world beta, and the social world gamma. These three, if you look at, say, the physical realities along the physical axis and virtual realities along the virtual axis, and then you've got augmented reality, which is a little of both of them, the physical and the virtual, or extended reality is what people are now using. And then coming out of the page, if you will, along the social axis, you've got in the metaverse is a shared VR. It's in the beta gamma plane, and then Mersivity.
Telling our story. It's a new way of telling our stories.
Yeah.
We by nature, we come from creatures that would sit around a fire. Originally they're, the only light that they had was, torches, fire, things like that. They tell each other stories, to educate, to entertain, and to find out from each other what was going on in the world, or, how do I understand what's going on? These new tools, for instance, doing the metaverse, things of that sort, are new storytelling methods. They're new ways in which we can entertain, educate, and hopefully maybe come into a better understanding of ourselves, of each other, and perhaps, if we do it the right way, of the universe itself.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of storytelling, like we can talk about augmented or extended reality storytelling narratives in the metaverse. And even fire itself is an interesting example because it's that fourth element, earth, water, air, fire. Roughly speaking, solid, liquid, gas, plasma. The pilot light in my hot water heater, the gas flame, when it goes out, the way it knows is because there's a rectification going on that there's a little sensor in there that senses whether it can convert AC to DC, which is rectification because of the plasma that's in the flame. So there's a very close association between plasma and fire. So roughly you've got these classic elements, earth, water, air, fire, which are kind of roughly the states of matter. And fire is that fourth state, I guess, that is kind of magical and, telling stories around the campfire and everything like that. So it's kind of, it takes us on a long human history of the natural elements.
Well, and our natural affinity to energy.
Yes.
And matter is energy for that.
Matter and energy are fungible, I suppose you could say.
Call them, fungible. An awful lot of energy out of matter.
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting to say, well, we've got this world that allows us to share our stories. A lot of what we do in the lab is HCI, human computer interaction. It's in the beta gamma plane. It's in the bits and genes plane. It's the metaverse, shared VR, human computer interaction, cyborg technologies. You have the blend between human and machine, human-machine. What's missing often is the physicality, the alpha axis, the sustainable. So what we like to do now, what some of us are talking about, is the sustainable metaverse or the physical metaverse, sustainable HCI or physical HCI. We call it water HCI or earth HCI or air HCI, water human computer interaction or physical computer interaction or sustainable human-computer interaction. These are ideas we're trying to put sustainability back in to a lot of this world that's ignored it.
Well, that brings up an interesting thing. Again, we seek for meaning out of things. What is it like to be water?
Yes. Yeah, we go for a swim almost every day.
Yeah, I know you do. You do, even when it's cold outside. You got that picture up here of you with, augmented reality goggles. I think that, right?
Yes. Yeah. So,
what is it like to be water? We can touch water. We can maybe understand the molecules of water, but do we know what it's like to be water? Yeah. Can we imagine that? Is that a story one could tell, for example?
actually, that's an interesting idea. Well, it reminds me of this concept of existential technology, or learn by being, LBB. Learn something by being something. Like, for example, if I, hang on a second, I'll get a ruler. I've just got some nice
This gets into another thing. You're doing a lot of stuff where you're people interacting with machines, because that's a big thing about what you've done all your life, Steve, right?
Yeah.
But are you, here's a big question. Are you, or can you be more human by the interfaces with machines? Can we remain human if we get intimate interfaces with machines, or will we lose that humanity? And what the heck is humanity anyway?
Well, if we get that idea, like I learn computers by becoming a computer. I am a computer. I am a camera. I've lived my life since early childhood with it being a camera as part of my body. So I understand photography in deep new ways. That's kind of what led me to the invention of HDR. I invented something called HDR because I was walking around seeing the world through my camera, and I couldn't see properly, and I'd trip and fall because I couldn't see the world. So I said, well, if I step out into the bright light, I can't see into some dark area. So then I invented this kind of HDR, like this welding helmet here is the HDR welding helmet, something from my...
But let's say, we're not too far, maybe, people like Elon Musk and folks like that are right, where we can interface our brains to machines. Or,
yes.
To actuators that can allow people, for instance, who are missing a limb to have an artificial limb that's much more natural, and works with our nervous system, for example. But go maybe far beyond that, where we essentially can do telepathy by the use of machinery and networking, for example. Can we be more? Can this lead us into better understanding of who we are? Will it lead us away from who we are? Will it be part of our evolution of what we are? And what are the choices and ethics about the things we do with these technologies?
In some ways, it already is. Like when I go down to the marina where the boats are around, and one boat bumps into another boat, you'll hear the captain will say, "Hey, you hit me." He doesn't say your boat hit my boat. I mean, you see the same thing in a parking lot when the car bumps into yours. You say you hit me. It doesn't say your car hit my car. And no more than if we're running down the hallway and one person bumps into somebody else, they don't say your shirt hit my shirt.
You hit me, yes.
Yeah, and when you say you hit me, we've become the technology. We're already there in some sense. We're already cyborgs in that existential sense of technology. We've become the technology. I already am a camera. I already am a computer.
How does that change our narrative? How does that change the stories we tell ourselves?
Yeah. Well, one good example, also another example I wanted to kind of raise to your earlier point of being technology is, if you look at this ruler here, like when I grew up, we learned inches and feet. My dad worked in a men's clothing store, and a lot of times I'd call to speak to him or something, and whoever was there would say, "Oh, he's smelling cloth right now." And I said, "What does that mean, smelling cloth?" And he said, "Well, when you're measuring cloth, you put it up to your nose and you pull it out to the end of your arm, and that's a yard."
Smelling cloth. Oh,
and so smelling cloth means measuring cloth.
Oh, and so I've heard that term before.
No, like if you buy a rope, you're smelling rope, like you're buying how many yards of rope would you like. So you put it on your nose and you pull it out to the end of your arm. 1, 2, 3. Each of those is a yard. That's the definition of a yard, the distance from a person's nose to their outstretched arm. that smelling cloth or smelling rope as measuring cloth or measuring rope, and using the body as a measure. And when we walk around, a lot of times, like if I walk around, I'll go like this: 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, and we walk around using our foot to count a horse in hands or cubits.
In a sense, we are our source of proportions. But as we change, how will our proportions, and our view of ourselves in the world change?
Well, you see, when we teach metric, we deny people the opportunity of existential education.
Essentially, it's an organic measurement. Yeah.
Existential education is to teach people how to measure and understand the world by being a ruler. I always said that, you can talk about measurement in theory, and that's pretty good. That's not as good.
Measurement, or an approximation to the measurement is really what that was.
Well, talking about measurement is one thing, but then giving them a ruler and telling them to measure stuff is even better. And the best is when they become the ruler. It's not that it'll be more accurate, because a lot of times we want a quick, approximate, rough idea of something. But
a meter is not too far off from a yard, right?
No, it's a little bit longer, and people can understand that to some degree. But
you can say I'm doing a meter,
When I notice that people who only use centimeters and don't understand feet and inches, they often have a less of an intuitive grasp on measurement, because when you use inches, and 12 is also a highly composite number too. So a third of a foot or a half a foot or a quarter of a foot is an integer number of inches. So it's very easy. I find people who learned to become the ruler, who learned inches the width of.
When you think about 360 degrees, right, comes from, what is it, the Phoenicians, it comes from Babylonians or something.
Yeah. It's this base.
And if you think about it, 12 inches, not 10. We have 10 fingers. Why do we have 12 inches?
Because it's a highly composite number. It makes for good math.
Yeah, interesting.
And so if you look at the ancient Chinese, the old abacus, the ancient Chinese, they counted 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F, 10, 11, 12, 13, and so on. And so their base, I like to call it crown rather than base, but they were counting in crown F, whereas now we count in crown 9, one less than the base. I won't say base 10, because every base is 10 in its own base. So no matter what base I was using, I could say I'm using base 10.
Interesting. Yeah. So is this giving you the stuff you wanted to see in a video?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been a fun grab, and I know a lot of what you do with storage systems and everything like that. Like, I think what we're running up into now as well is a kind of like, let's say we capture our whole life, we're measuring everything around us. We've become rulers, we've become cameras, we've become computers. In this existential sense, by our very being, we're generating massive amounts of data. I'd love to get your own take on what you see the future of humanity at this nexus of the physical, virtual, and social worlds.
Well, all these things that we do, with digital technology in particular, it consumes energy. And it can be more efficient, less efficient, but it all consumes energy. The more of the stuff the more of data and processing we do, the more we store things, the more energy we're using to do that one way or another. So there's kind of a balance between the benefit we get, whether it be economic or something else, and the energy consumption. And not only the generation of data takes energy, but if you're going to have continuity of data, if you're going to have history of information, that itself will take energy, because all information will eventually become corrupted if left by itself. Thermodynamics works against you. And so you've got to think about progressing information, in our case, across technologies as technologies evolve, as well as across time. So we are intimately tied with the flows of energy in terms of the things that we do, and our understanding of nature, and our understanding of ourselves and our own history. In a sense, forgetting is an important part of that, because data will itself be lost because not all data is perceived at the time as having the same value. There's a there, and we're learning this now with AI, is that if you keep data, you might be able to get the value out of it that was not realized earlier. And that's why, for instance, doing higher and higher resolution astronomical imaging or physics experiments where I keep more and more of the data allows you to, you spend a lot of money generating that data. It gives you the possibility when the technology gets there, being able to process it. But at the same time, data will decay over time. So we've got a fundamental race between thermodynamics and conceptualization and understanding and passing on, finding, understanding, keeping our information in the world. So I think it's a fundamental thing about being what we are as humans, is that we are conscious of ourselves. We are conscious that we're finite, that we die. But we can see a world around us. And in a sense, and maybe it's partly tied to the fact that we don't know what happens after that for us. But we can see the world has continuity, unless it's some, like I say, we're avatars in a game or something of that sort that somebody's playing. But, we, as a consequence of that, I think the best of humanity is in that race between the generation and accumulation of information, experiences, emotions, and just being alive, being part of that, and the eventual, loss of information, loss of self, eventually, all these things that are part of who we are, being a human, and I hope that this be true of any other thing maybe after us, is a tragedy is a glorious tragedy, right? Because in the end, you're going away. But in the interim period, you can make a difference. You can find out things. You can have a good life. Maybe, enjoy the things of being alive, of having new beings with you, and maybe finding out something about the world and making a difference. But ultimately, it's going to go away for you, at least, as far as we know, right? So it's a fascinating thing, this universe we've got, and ourselves being in it. It's just amazing to think about that, and being able to think about that.
Yeah, I guess there's something magical about the the notion of energy. Entropy is another. I guess we could think of.
Yeah, energy and entropy are like key to who we are, I think.
Yeah, we could really say we want to live in an exergy efficient world where the exchange of energy is sort of efficient in many ways, like especially when we look at especially your work with storage and everything. You probably think a lot about how a lot of times when we store data or store something, we don't know its value. We don't know if it will have future value or not. So a lot of times you see the world, we don't know what might happen. I mean, in a surveillance system, obviously it's recording for the thing that may or may not happen. It may or may not be relevant, and we don't know until later. But more generally, we don't want to live in a surveillance-only world. We want some surveillance as well, inverse surveillance, perhaps. But more generally, we don't know what's going to happen or what's going to be important. I mean, I document my life to some degree, and then all of a sudden I find, somebody else thought that was really important. So I try to share my documents of the world because other people say, "Wow, I really love that shot." Or that image. When we swim underwater, we sometimes will get some really great, something really picturesque. The sun will come out. Maybe it's cloudy, and then the rain, and all of a sudden the sun comes through and something beautiful happens that you didn't expect. And
see, that's the thing. The other thing is the concept of beauty, the concept of that which transcends the normal, that which that which makes everything else worthwhile. And I think creativity and discovery is like that too. We are physical beings, and we physically react to these things. There's energy exchanges going on that are part of that process of doing it, which we don't totally understand. And there's, so there's much to be learned. There's much we have learned. there's enormous opportunities, I believe, for us out there, whether, on the earth, but also as we move off the earth and go elsewhere as well, So that's cool. It's a good time to be alive.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Okay, well, and certainly the IEEE mission, of advancing technology for humanity, or ideally, hopefully, getting sustainability in there too, and advancing technology for humanity and Earth. There's probably a lot that can be done to make the world a better place.
You betcha. Okay.
All right.
Good talking to you.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.